Okay, we're live, and welcome to WRRAP's newest episode of our sustainability series. I'm Skylar Fisher, and today I am joined with the Programs and Operations Manager from Friends of the Dunes, Suzie Fortner. And we really wanted to talk with Friends of the Dunes because we think that it is so important to dedicate outreach to the community and fostering environmental education and stewardship. So, Suzie, if you just want to go off and say a little bit about yourself.
Hi, thanks for having me, Skylar. I just wanted to start by expressing gratitude to WRAP. Thank you for existing and thank you for all that you do. I watched your other two interviews with Maggie Gaynor from Zero Waste Humboldt and Kaya, I think was her name, from the North Coast Co-op.
Yeah.
Both great organizations that I support personally. So thanks for doing that. And yeah, I've personally helped out with the donation dash. So that's my experience.
Oh, awesome. I'm so sad we weren't able to do that this year.
I know, I'm really bummed. Yeah, I've been involved with Scrap Humboldt for many years. So, as a Scrap Humboldt volunteer, I've helped out with that donation dash. I just thought it was such an awesome idea to reduce wastefulness at the end of the semester. So, thanks for doing all that stuff. Yeah, so as you mentioned, my name is Suzie Fortner. I'm the Programs and Operations Director for Friends of the Dunes. I am originally from San Diego, is where I was born and raised. I was lucky enough to have parents and family who took me camping and tide pooling. I loved the ocean growing up, and I've just been a lifelong nature lover, which eventually brought me up to Humboldt County. I lived in Santa Cruz for a little while, where I got my Bachelor of Science in Marine Biology from UC Santa Cruz. Go banana slugs. And then I moved up here for grad school to Humboldt State to get my master's degree, master's of social science, through a program called Environment and Community, which is an excellent interdisciplinary social science program. And I did a focus on environmental education. So I started that up here back in 2007. I've been in Humboldt since 2006. And I think it was I actually ended up moving up here with an ex because it was the only grad school we could agree on.
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't work out with the two of us, but it worked out pretty well for me in Humboldt County because I think it was just always meant to be. I've been here for a long time and I love this place and love this community. Um, so yeah, and then my focus on environmental education while I was in grad school is what brought me to Friends of the Dunes. So I've been working with Friends of the Dunes originally as a volunteer. I started volunteering in 2006 and was hired in a part-time temporary position in February of 2008. So it lasted a little longer than I anticipated and have been in multiple roles since that time. But I definitely love the organization.
And so, what part of the organization, I would have to ask, has made you want to stay with them for so long?
Um, yeah, so it just really fits in with my personal views on people and nature and how to connect people with nature. What sort of brought me to Friends of the Dunes in the first place. So I had background experience in environmental education through other venues. I worked for the Birch Aquarium at Scripps in San Diego and an organization down in the Bay Area called the Marine Science Institute, which are great organizations with amazing programs. But then after that, I did a year of AmeriCorps
Okay.
where I worked with underserved and disadvantaged youth in East San Jose. I worked at Independence High School. And it occurred to me while I was there that not all kids have equal access to these environmental education programs.
Mm-hmm.
So, what's brought me to Friends of the Dunes and kept me here for so long, I ended up actually working on my master's project with Friends of the Dunes, is this idea of free environmental education programs. So, all of our environmental education programs are completely free for the schools. We write grants, I write a lot of grants. And we pay for bus funding, and we don't charge a fee for these programs because we want to get all kids outside to have fun educational experiences in nature. Feet in the sand is really what I'm all about.
And so, Like for me personally, I think that environmental education is really good because I feel like if we understand it a little bit better, then we have just a better overall relationship. Is that like your interpretation, or do you think? Because personally, I mean, I love getting my feet in the sand, but I think that like understanding is really impactful as well.
Yeah, definitely. So, really, what I focused on in grad school, I was really interested in this idea of like I'm a person who cares a lot about nature, and I always have. And I think that stems from my family taking me outside a lot as a kid and going camping a lot as a kid. I just grew to love nature, love animals. I always loved animals and nature. Um, but then I see people in the world who don't care as much. So when I was an undergrad in marine biology, I learned about the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, back in like the early 2000s. And it was shocking and it broke my heart. And I immediately took steps to reduce my personal consumption of plastic and reduce my own waste. And that's always been something that's been very important to me. In fact, I helped when I was in high school. I was president of the environmental club. I was voted most likely to save the rainforest. So replace rainforest with dunes, and it kind of worked out. So it's been something that's been close to my heart for a long time. Um, but then I see other people that don't quite care as much and don't, I mean, you can tell them about the Great Pacific Garbage Patch and they're just like, well, whatever, I'm going to keep using a lot of plastic because it's easier
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes cheaper. And it's just sort of ingrained into our society and our system the way that um, this very consumer based society, right? Where easy is better than, easy is more important than what's good for the environment. So I was really interested in like what makes people care, right? What makes me care so much about it, and why are there other people out there that don't care as much? And I think for me personally, that boils down to connections to nature. And if you have to first love something before you're going to protect it, right? So because I already had this love of the ocean, when I learned about plastics in the ocean, I was like, I don't want that. I don't want to contribute to that. I want to help solve this problem. I want to be a part of the solution. But if you are, in the middle of the United States somewhere and you've never been to the ocean, or even not even the middle of the United States, but I mean, for our programs, we have kids from Eureka, from Fortuna, who have never been to the beach before, who are not that far away. So if you don't have that personal connection and you don't already love something,
Mm-hmm.
you're less likely to take steps to protect it.
I love that question, like what makes people care, and then the fact that you've like gone so far as to like answer that and like make people care, like, and that so that they genuinely do love it. And I was curious like what other programs you had besides the environmental education that does connect people to the outdoors in that kind of way.
Yeah, so we have a lot of programs. So we have, first of all, we have our Humboldt Coastal Nature Center out in Manila. If you haven't been there, in a normal time, I'd be doing this interview from there and could show you a little bit in the background. But instead, I brought in a dune poster behind me so that you
Oh,
can,
I love
there's a little
that.
bit of a dunescape since I'm doing this from home. But yeah, come out and visit our Humboldt Coastal Nature Center when we're open again. It's out in Manila, 220 Stamps Lane. So we have the Nature Center is an interpretive facility in itself. So we manage that Nature Center. It's a really cool building, dome-shaped building covered in sand and native plants. Looks like a dune. It was actually built as a house by the Stamps family back in the 80s as a retirement home, and then we converted it to a nature center in 2010, opened it in 2011. And that sits on our 122-acre land trust. So we're also landowners, and that property belongs to us. So there's that kind of stewardship land trust element to the organization. We have, as I mentioned, we have the environmental education programs for K through 12 students, which are completely free for schools. And our Bay to Dunes program, which is our primary program for elementary schools, has been around since the 90s, since 97. So that's kind of mind blowing for me to think about sometimes, is that it's been around for over 20 years. So every once in a while, I run into somebody in the community who finds out where I work and they're like, oh, I remember going to the dunes when I was a kid,
Oh, that's
as
awesome.
young adults. And so it's nice to have that they just have sort of this smile on their face and this positive association with having done that way back in the day. Um, we also have adult education programs. So we do free guided walks for the community. Obviously, right now, all of these things I'm mentioning are kind of on hold
Mm-hmm.
because of shelter in place. So none of them are happening currently. But before before the coronavirus, we were having guided walks a couple times a month, typically, and those are free for the community. We also have family programs. So we do a monthly nature story time program, which is a nature themed story and a craft and a movement activity, kind of geared for ages 3 to 5. Um, and that typically happens every third Saturday of the month. No promises because I'm not in charge of this stuff, but there has been talk of potentially doing one of those through like a Facebook Live. We're not sure how that would work yet, but we're working on sort of adjusting. And then we also have stewardship programs. So we also engage people in stewardship of the dunes through hands-on restoration activities. So there's some invasive plants out there in our dune environments that we're trying to remove to make room for more biodiversity. And we have volunteer restoration work days. It's called the Dune Ecosystem Restoration Team. And those typically happen 2 times a month. So that's a great way to get out and remove invasive plants and kind of give back to nature in a way by making some more room for our native dune plants. And I'm not even sure I mentioned our mission statement or anything, but Friends of the Dunes is dedicated to conserving the natural diversity of coastal environments through community-supported education and stewardship programs. And the really important part to me in that statement is the community-supported aspect. So
Mm-hmm.
we have very few staff members. We only have 3 full-time staff right now, 4 permanent part-times, and a couple seasonal folks. Very few people for how much I just mentioned that we do. um, so it's all community based. Our volunteers, they lead our environmental education programs, they lead our guided walks, they do our restoration, they help run the nature center. So they're like the faces that greet you and tell you about the trails when you walk into the nature center. So lots of volunteer opportunities, and we could not do it without our community. And then we also, of course, have community donors. Our members contribute an annual donation to help us keep the nature center open, which is completely free for the public, and help keep our programs going.
That's incredible. And it really speaks to how much the community loves Friends of the Dunes, considering like how many programs you're able to operate and how many volunteers that you're getting. That's awesome. That really speaks to how impactful the organization is. And I was curious, kind of like as a sidestep, of any challenges that Friends of the Dunes has been facing. I mean, outside of the current outlier, which is COVID, but in the normal operations, is there anything that I guess challenge is the best word.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think there's a few challenges. I mean, the restoration activities themselves, there's a lot of restoration to do, and even just running volunteer programs, it costs money to us to have the staff to run it, and also just to manage a land trust like we do. There's costs associated with that. We've been in this amendment process for our coastal development permit for a while just to add 3.5 acres to our property so that we can do some trail work there, basically. So those are kind of big barriers and challenges. Being landowners, which we haven't always been. Our organization started back in the 80s, in 1982, just as a volunteer branch of the Nature Conservancy when they managed the Lanphier Christensen Dunes, it was called back then. And then we became our own nonprofit in the 90s. And then we became a land trust in about 2007. So we haven't always been land managers. It's kind of a new thing for Friends of the Dunes, and that brings on its own whole assortment of challenges. I would say probably one of our bigger challenges always is just keeping our programs funded, because we want to keep everything free. So we're constantly fundraising, we're constantly writing grants, to keep those programs funded and accessible to our community for free. Let's see, what other challenges? I had saw it in your questions that you sent me that you were had specifically said challenges to sustainability, since that's kind of your focus there at WRRAP. And I would say, as far as that, we face the normal challenges in like an office environment of, how many things do you print, trying not to be wasteful. I'm pretty strict about these things within the office, and, make sure people are recycling and reusing paper. So just those normal, but we do pretty good job. All of our events tend to be pretty zero waste. In fact, I would say for the most part, zero waste. So we have
Awesome.
Our fundraising events every year are Wine by the Sea, which takes place in the fall. We use our own wine glasses and wash everything and rent plates so that we're not using disposables during any of that. And then we have the Sand Sculpture Festival, which happens in the summer typically. That's kind of, we're not sure yet if it's happening. But it seems kind of unlikely at the moment that we're going to be able to do that this year. And then we were supposed to have the Get Outside Gear Sale on April 11th, which is an event really focused around reuse itself. So it's basically kind of a big yard sale for used outdoor gear. So we want to make outdoor gear being like kayaks, canoes, camping gear, all sorts of other things, but easily accessible and affordable stuff to help people get outside, but also a venue. So some people will consign big items with us, like kayaks, and then Friends of the Dunes gets a portion of the proceeds, and then they get a portion of the proceeds. So we're helping sort of reuse, in a way, those outdoor gear items. And then, we just try and keep our events as zero waste as possible. I would say my biggest challenge for that on a personal level is we try and promote zero waste and waste-free lunches with students for our school education programs. However, the free school lunches that are provided through the schools are not zero waste.
Oh.
So that's always sort of been a challenge for me, because we have a program in particular, Kids Ocean Day, which focuses on marine debris. That was actually my first job with Friends of the Dunes, I was the Ocean Day assistant, so I went in and did all the classroom presentations for Ocean Day and helped coordinate that event. But the kids get these lessons around marine debris and reducing marine debris. And we were trying to promote trash-free lunches, and we always have through that program. But then we get to this sort of equity issue, right? Because the schools that are giving out free lunches to the low-income students, those school-provided lunches are often, number one, they're not always the healthiest of lunches. And number two, they are packed full of trash. They're just individually packaged items. So it's hard to reward the students whose parents are involved and engaged enough to pack their waste-free lunches, and then not reward the students who are getting the free lunches from the school that are not waste-free. So that continues to be a challenge for me on the sustainability front. Every time we have a school field trip come in, our trash can is just full of wrappers and containers, and sometimes food. Even kids will throw away like whole items of food. So that's challenging, and I think it's kind of a more systemic problem within the school system.
Yeah.
I apologize. There's a puppy behind me.
That's okay. Yeah, and I think like identifying like the root of the problem is really important, and like I don't know, I think that like identifying it and understanding that, like, especially for the children who have the free lunch, like it's not like their fault, but then like also knowing that you need to like tackle the problem at the root of it. But it does seem a bit overwhelming at times, right? Because you're like, well, how am I supposed to tackle this huge problem? But to kind of go from challenges, I was curious, as, you know, an HSU organization, what opportunities you have for HSU students to engage with your mission.
We have a lot of opportunities to get engaged. So as I mentioned, we have so many volunteer opportunities depending on your interests. If you just want to be out there in the dunes removing invasive plants. That's always an opportunity that typically happens on hopefully I'm going to get this right, the second Sunday and the third Saturday. You might want to, it's been a little while since we've done them. Might want to check our website, friendsofthedunes.org, for those specific details. But 2 times a month, we have those restoration work days. We also have the school education programs that we need volunteers for. So our environmental education volunteers, you don't really need any experience. You just need to have an interest in working with kids and an interest in nature. You don't really need to know much about the dunes. The program is really focused around just guided exploration of the dunes. And you kind of learn with the kids through doing the program, but we do a full environmental education training before sending anybody out with groups of children. But that's a really fun way to get involved if you're interested in environmental education and working with students. That's really what got me involved in this whole realm in the first place, because it's just, I wanted to share my passion for marine biology. Ended up working with environmental education programs at an aquarium, and I hadn't really worked much with kids before, but they're just so excitable about nature. They're just, they're not afraid to show that excitement and to get really engaged in the activities and play the games, and it's just so much fun. So yeah, I encourage you to look into those opportunities. We also need volunteers at the Nature Center. We need help just doing some landscaping, some weeding around the building to keep the building looking nice. We always need help at all our fundraising events. So if you're just interested in volunteer opportunities to at those fundraising events like Wine by the Sea or Gear Sale, we always need volunteers for those. And we're always happy to host interns. We get a lot of interns through the Natural Resources Department, through the Environmental Education and Interpretation. They have to do a certain number of hours for their practicum course. So we often get interns through that program who are always wonderful. And we can always come up with projects for students doing that. And we get also some restoration folks who are just filling hours doing restoration. And child development is another major that we get some good volunteers from, and some internships. Yeah, lots of opportunities. I should also mention we have a coastal naturalist training, which is a junior college level course. You can get academic credits for taking it. It's a 6-week course that takes place in the fall, usually starts in the beginning of September. That is one thing that there is a fee associated with, but we try and offer scholarships as best we can. It's part of the California Naturalist program, so you'll become certified as a California naturalist throughout the state for participating. But it's 6 weeks of classroom lessons in the evenings at the Nature Center, and then weekend field trips. And most of the sessions are led by local experts in our community, so you get an opportunity to meet botanists and geologists and ecologists. Hey, sorry if you can hear the puppy. They were sleeping up until the interview started. Okay. But yeah, a great way to learn more. Okay. These live things.
They want to participate too.
Yeah, but also, and we're always willing to work with people if you have ideas for internships. We really love working with students, and I think it was Maggie in one of your other interviews that mentioned this, but I think it's a great opportunity for Humboldt students to get more involved in the community. I think beyond, providing these environmental education programs, a lot of what we're doing is sort of building this sense of place and helping students feel more connected to the community. And I think personally, I think that's really important to get involved with whatever not necessarily us, but whatever organization interests you. In Northern California, we have the highest per capita of nonprofits. So there's not a lack of volunteer opportunities and ways to get involved with whatever you're interested in. And I think it's a great way to get experience in the field. It's a great way to, at Friends of the Dunes, if we're hiring for anything, we always really like to hire volunteers if they've been volunteering, because they've already shown that commitment to the organization. And even if it doesn't lead to a job with us, I'm always so happy to write letters of recommendation and give good references to folks who put in time with us. It just makes me really happy to help students kind of find their way and get some good experience in the field.
And are there any like websites or social media that you can share for people or students to find out more?
Yeah, absolutely. For Friends of the Dunes, our website is friendsofthedunes.org. And then our Facebook, I believe it's Friends of the Dunes Nature Center or something along those lines. But if you just search Friends of the Dunes, you should be able to find us. I think we even had this shared as an event together, so you can probably find us through that. And our Instagram is just Friends of the Dunes on Instagram. We're pretty active on Instagram and on Facebook. So our outreach manager, Sophie, shout out to Sophie, who does an amazing job with all of that stuff. So yeah, follow us on those.
Well, thank you so much for talking with me. And before we wrap things up, are there any like last thoughts that you wanted to get out there?
Yeah, sorry, I have written down some notes here of just what I wanted to talk about. But yeah, I love that you're doing these interviews. I think it's great. And you know, Friends of the Dunes, it's a great organization to sort of get outside, connect people with nature. That's really what we're all about is helping people fall in love with nature and hopefully develop some stewardship values. As I mentioned, you know, I think you need to love something first before you're going to protect it. And you know, I don't know who all is tuning in, but I just want to stress that if you have not been out to the dunes before, please go out and explore them. Most of the sites right now are still open. There's a lot of parking lots. Parking lots are closed in some instances, like the refuge, Humboldt Bay National Wildlife Refuge, and the BLM have closed their parking lots and their restrooms. Our parking lot's open, our trails are open, our restrooms are closed because we just don't have the ability to clean them right now. So just plan accordingly, but it's a good way to social distance and get outside and explore. Um, our nature center's closed, but when we are open again, we help produce these maps here, the Humboldt Beaches, Dunes, and Wetlands Map and Guide. It's an excellent overview of the different coastal places that you can go explore. So I encourage you to get out there. You know, we're out there on the peninsula at the Humboldt Coastal Nature Center, but just north of us is the Malel Dunes Cooperative Management Area. And then just north of that is the Lanphier Dunes. South of us, there's more public lands managed for access and conservation. Some really beautiful places. I honestly, when I moved up here, I had very little experience with dunes outside of desert dunes down in between Southern California and Arizona, where people just go to ride their dirt bikes. And so that was my impression of dunes. And then I came out here, saw these beautiful, amazing dunes in Humboldt County. And we're very blessed to be so close to nature here and have it be so accessible. And we have a 32-mile stretch of coastal dunes, basically from Trinidad down to southern Humboldt. So lots of places to get outside and go explore. And I think it's, especially in times like these sorts of times, of course, be very careful about the shelter in place restrictions and physical distancing, but it's great for mental health to get outside and get exercise. So I definitely encourage that. Yeah, and we're just all about, you know, equal access to nature. I think everybody should get outside and go exploring. And I find that you know, when we do tabling events at Humboldt State, we participate in all the career fairs and volunteer fairs. I get a lot of students coming to the tables and just asking, like, where are the dunes? How do I get out there? So this map is actually available on our website. If you go to our website and click on resources, you can actually get a hold of this map there too. But yeah, we would love to help you find the dunes if you haven't found them already, and get outside and explore them because they're really amazing and it's a really special place, a very unique and very diverse. It's not just open sand. There's dune forests, there's seasonal wetlands, there's everything's blooming right now, especially out in the foredunes. Our native dune plants are just going crazy, blooming during the spring wildflower season. So, encourage you to get outside.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate our talk today.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for what you're doing. And I apologize for dog noises in the background.